Hello and welcome. This is Martin Willis. This is the first time I've ever really done anything like this. This is basically an addendum to the show I did on Tuesday, May 7th with Michael Hererra and Jonathan Weygandt. A couple of reasons. One, I think there's kind of a bombshell I was trying to get Jonathan to say. And as if you have watched the YouTube or even listened to the audio podcast, you're going to understand that he came back on. He was all willing to talk ahead of the show and then sort of froze up. I understand there's a lot of anxiety with him speaking about this. But even during the show, you may have noticed I took a little break and mentioned to him, asked him if he could talk about what he told me in the afternoon. So I decided to take it upon myself to talk about it because I can't risk bringing him back again and having him freeze up like that. So the other reason I am doing this addendum show is because just before the show with Jonathan and Mike Hererra, I started getting these emails. And then during the show, I saw these comments posted about Nathan, I'm not sure exactly, I think it's Labrum, which was his commander, basically on a podcast that was called the Vetted Podcast, and he was talking and saying that Mike never had this experience basically. So Mike sent me a note to post, which I did, but I really do realize that not everyone reads the text below, not everyone goes into the show notes, things like that. So I thought I would get this out there in the audio and video and just simply read you what Mike had sent to me. So here it goes. And then after I get done with this, I'm going to tell you what I thought was kind of a bombshell from Jonathan that he told me earlier in the day of the show. So here we go. Good afternoon, Martin. Thank you again for having us on your show. It was good to link up with Jonathan in the process. A few things I need to address. It's regarding the Vetted Podcast, which interviewed Nathan Labrum. He was a team leader at one point, not during the mission that I was on. As I've stated in numerous emails, that the sticks, that's what the groups of people were composed of, the Marines were from different squads, platoons, etc. He was attached to the ship that the team leader was at, for food service, and hence that's why they were split up abnormally. So he continues on, the statements made during Nathan's interview, which was speaking about me seeing aliens and the operation being at night, were not things that I've stated on any interview, podcast, or anything I've ever done, including my testimony to the government agencies. The inaccurate information they are providing is not anything that I have ever stated. Both of the gentlemen haven't seen any interview I have done in detail, let alone the photo they provided was not me as well. Three of us have proven it wasn't, and we know the actual Marine that they are trying to allege was me. As I have stated, I will never release the other names of the other Marines who were with me due to them asking me not to. And he did not want to subject them to the same treatments that he has received from all avenues. He continues on, this is an attempt from someone who personally disliked me from the beginning and has learned of my success as an entrepreneur over the years, since I was the quote lone wolf, unquote, or the guy who would never make it, so to speak. There have been numerous people who have spoken to Nathan about the details of which he could not recall. I'm not bothered by this, and I could care less on what the others think and say. They don't know me personally and have no impact on my life whatsoever. They aren't on my level, and I'm not even close in life. And the only people I value the opinions of are those in my circle. Thank you, Martin, once again. So I wanted to get that again. I wanted to get that out there. So the people who have watched the first show or listened to it, would have that information. And so I hope that is helpful for anyone. And if anyone has any questions, I can always forward questions to, any guest. And I look at each time someone asks me to do that, I do look at them and I make a decision whether I'm going to do that or not, just to be fair and clear about that. All right, so Jonathan showed up around 4 o'clock or so, the day of the podcast on May 7th, and we went out to dinner and we hung out and talked a lot. And this was a setup. I've showed this picture before. We were in the same room when I was doing that podcast. So during dinner, Jonathan started talking about living with his grandmother and how, things had happened during 1999. And he did include in the podcast on May 7th the information about a car that's basically smashed into his while his was in this driveway. It's what's called a hidden driveway. And some car whipped in. His car was too far forward, and they smashed into the back of his car. He said it basically totaled his car, and whoever it was pulled away and left a bumper. And he is getting the police report. He's going to get that to me. That shows also the information that there was a federal license plate on the bumper that was left there. So they drove off and left their bumper, which is kind of bizarre. And this is also the house. So he lived there with his grandmother. Now, his grandmother was quite a person. She had her PhD and JD. She had a law degree. And so this is what I consider a bombshell. He did not use any terms of who he thought these people were. He just described what his grandmother described to him. First of all, I should say that his grandmother never knew about his UFO encounter in Peru. She had no clue about that. So a knock was on the door. Now, Jonathan, again, he was living with his grandmother. He was working 2 jobs. He was not there. His car was there, though, at the time. He said, I don't know, someone picked him up or whatever. So there was a knock on the door. His grandmother answered the door, and there was a male figure dressed in a nice dark suit, bald head, wearing sunglasses. Again, his grandmother told him this is what happened. Very, very pale skin. She looked out. There was a Grand Marquis in the driveway, and there was another person looked just like this guy, very similar, sitting behind the wheel. So this guy said to her, is Jonathan Weygandt here? Would like to speak to him. And she said, who are you? And where are you from? Why do you want this information? And the guy just kept repeating the same thing. We need to speak to Jonathan. And she said, well, I need to see some ID. Again, she's no dummy. She studied law. She said, I need to see your ID. And he kept repeating over and over. And she said it very monotone and just repeating the question over and over. And she finally said, go away. And he got in the car and drove off. Never saw him again. But to me, I thought that was kind of a bombshell. And Jonathan, he never mentioned Men in Black, and I don't know if they are or not. But you do hear, often you hear of these circumstances happening. My producer told me a story in the 1970s of these 2 guys showing up at her friend's house who saw a UFO. I mean, dressed in suits. I mean, it's very, very, very strange. I know there's a lot of people that have written about Men in Black and that they do exist, and all types of theories that they're ETs and all that. I have no idea. I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is repeating what Jonathan told me, what his grandmother told him. Now, she thought he was in trouble in some type of way. She never knew about the UFO encounter in Peru in 1997. She was very angry at him, actually, he told me. And anyway, he, just waited till things cooled down, and it never happened again. So the only thing that did happen is what he talked about I believe it was a few months later that the vehicle smashed into his car and left the bumper, including the license plate. So I wanted to clear this up. This, again, is the first time I've ever done an addendum to any podcast. I'm getting this out in audio and video. And if you go to the show notes, you will see the pictures of Jonathan's, where he lived and all that. And also the document that Mike sent me, and documents he sent me previous that he mentioned during the show. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to this. and we'll see you next time.